Hello, welcome back to the Let's See Brief podcast. I'm Jenna.
I'm Ashley, and today we have a special guest that we're super excited about. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Abbey Grace Jones.
Amazing. Abbey Grace is our friend. I feel like Abbey Grace for the last 3 or 4 years now through church, but I feel like you and Jenna have known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, actually, I remember when we met. I don't even know how this happened, but you asked me to go out to dinner with you. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming it was like, there's a young girl, I'm an older girl, let's have a church mentorship relationship vibe. Mm-hmm. And I remember you asked me to go to Shady Grove.
Yes.
Oh,
and I was like in college. And
I feel like we started talking about like careers and workforce, and that just like went into a dark hole of conversation. It was like, we should find a time to continue this.
Yes. Well, I remember just being so nervous. Like, so nervous.
That sounds
so
like
funny.
Were you engaged? Or not even yet?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I was like young, and I was just so nervous. And I remember asking you, I was like, oh, so like you and your husband got married really young, didn't you? And you were like, I'm 29 or something like that. And I was like, what?
Uh-huh. You were perplexed at my
Yes.
age.
Yes. You look very young.
You look very young, but
it.
you carry yourself very maturely at the same time.
Yes.
So you're like, wow,
it.
she's so mature for a 25-year-old.
And she wants to hang out with me.
Yes. Abbey Grace is like the most like comforting person.
Sweet.
I feel like she'll tell you
Ever.
how it is, but then also
Yes.
just be such a good listener at the same time and just be like, yeah, of course. Okay, so here's some things
Well,
I can see.
don't think you should do that though. And I'm like, okay,
okay.
thank you, actually. Abbey Grace is like the person in my life that I go to when I'm like, I need confidence to like confront someone. She's like,
That's fair.
set your boundary.
Boundaries are important. That could be a whole nother conversation.
Oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
yes. But okay, tell us like give us a little intro on yourself.
A little intro. Well, my life currently, I work full-time from home, which is incredible. COVID, like most people, sent me home to work, and I never went back, and it's the best. I have a 2-year-old daughter, Ruby.
Ruby Day.
Ruby Day.
She's
The best.
the best.
We actually
She's
we
the life
spent
of the
like
party.
15 minutes before this talking
did.
about how much we love her and how chill she is.
You both like captured her on film, which I think is really
That
cool.
is true.
Yes.
And I feel like I look back at those all the time because we've done really well. I feel like of capturing these like seasons in our life, especially since she has been in it, and it's just crazy how it's gone so fast. Mm-hmm. So I feel like if I'm not working, I'm hanging out with her. I'm married to Corey, and
How long have you been married?
we celebrated 8 years of marriage in May.
That's crazy.
So
It is.
cute.
It's weird.
8
It's
is a
weird.
big number.
Literally, like we're all like spread out. Like you're 8, you just celebrated 5, and then I'm coming up on 1, and I like even just looking at 5, I'm like I can't comprehend being there. Like,
Oh my gosh.
Like the first year has definitely gone by fast, but I'm like okay, like it'll be fun. Like we'll celebrate a year, but then hearing like even something so close as 5, I'm like that's weird.
Yeah, I think it's funny because so much like we've had so much life happen in that 8 years that it's just like, how does that time go so fast?
Mm-hmm.
Like the seasons feel long, but you go and the years just fly by. So yeah, that's a little like where I'm.
Your recent update.
That's fair. I am expecting. We've got a baby boy on the way in October,
Yay! What's his actual
exciting.
date? October
19th.
Yay!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Could share birthday with Cole. Halloween.
Yeah, it's
Ooh.
true. Cole is
Well,
a
that's so
Halloween
far.
baby.
Ooh.
You're like, please no.
You're like, how
were you
about
early
October
with
1st?
Ruby?
Ruby was a week and a half early. Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's not common for, I don't know,
First.
what's even common?
That-
I feel like
Yes.
everyone
Yes.
I know like is like usually like a couple weeks late with their first baby, but then who knows? There's probably 500 other women that are always early.
Yes, and they say that like everybody reaches a point of like, I'm done being pregnant, like I'm ready to do this. And we actually went on a walk. Remember, we went to Frick
Yes.
Park. I'm like, we're gonna walk this baby out. 24 hours later, my water breaks. I'm like,
That's
okay,
crazy.
let's do
I
it.
was the last walk.
The
You were.
last
You
walk.
You were the last like activity, I think, because it was like 5 a.m.
I'm
so
honored.
special. So special.
It's like, I just need to get this baby out.
Okay, so before we get into the topic of today's episode, we should say a trigger warning for infertility, pregnancy loss things. We're going to be talking all of those
sensitive topics.
Yes,
absolutely.
sensitive topics, but we really wanted to do this episode because I feel like, one, infertility things are so common these days, and I feel like a lot of people feel like they're either going through it alone or they just can't, like, maybe they feel awkward to open up about it, or it's just a sensitive topic in general. And the other reason that I like really wanted to talk about this is because I always talk to Abbey Grace when other people in my life might be going through something similar. And I'm like, how would you advise me to like handle this with others? Because I feel like that's another thing. There's so many graphics always on Instagram. They're like, this is what not to say to someone. This is what you should say. But then like other things will say something completely opposite. And it's just like a lot of times it seems like it's too complicated. I just won't talk about it.
Absolutely.
I won't even ask.
That is always my default, but then looking back, I'm like, they probably felt like they had no friend in like the moment. And like, I feel like 90% of the time when I talk to somebody, like, how are you feeling? They're like, nobody asks me about it. We have a friend who has gone, I don't want to give too many details away to give them away, but gone through something really hard in talking about like kids and stuff. And I would just be like, how are you? And she's like, thank you for asking, because everyone is scared to ask me. And like afraid of saying the wrong thing, which I'm like, oh, okay, well, thank goodness I asked, because I usually go on the opposite end and I would feel awful. I mean, you think that you're doing something helpful, but really you could just be like, they could just feel isolated.
Very much.
Yeah. So anyways, we're going to be talking about all that stuff. So if that is like a hard thing for you to hear, you can skip this episode. But if you are interested in that or just need some encouragement, welcome.
Here it is.
Here we are.
You're not alone.
Absolutely.
Okay, so why don't you give us like a little like summary of your childbearing
journey.
Yes. Well, I think it's important to say that, like, I think I had, growing up, everybody asks you, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, who do you want to be? And my answer was always mom. Like, I just want to be a mom. I just want to have kids. Obviously, like, having a husband was thrown into that time.
Like, I guess
but I think once I reached my early to mid 20s, was also just in this place of like, am I actually ever gonna meet someone that I like want to spend my life with? And actually like wrestled with thoughts of like, would I want to have kids by myself if that was never even on the table?
Did you see yourself like as like a young mom?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Yeah. I mean, I think had you had asked me even in college, it's like I just wanted to get married and have kids. I didn't necessarily have this like career mind for myself. I didn't have any sort of like big dreams in the workforce world. But that was kind of my, like, I just want to meet someone that I can share and live my life with and have babies. Thank God, met Corey. And
how old were you when you guys met?
25.
Okay.
Tell us the meeting story.
Oh,
it's such chance, I feel like.
It's so, yeah, it's like my movie story. Everybody has a movie story. We were on a work trip. He was doing the same job for the same company in Pittsburgh. I was doing it in Nashville. And our company had a group training in Columbus. And we met at that training. And
what was the vibe of meeting?
I mean, I was definitely interested. Like
how did he approach you and say
he didn't?
Hi?
So it's just a bunch of like people in their 20s, like
just hanging out,
you know, you're eating and drinking on someone else's dime. So it's like, let's
Having
have a
time.
good time.
Absolutely.
And we were actually all down at the hotel bar, and the girl who was my friend, actually, who's staying in my room, we were sharing, she was interested in the guy that was in Corey's room.
Oh.
So like we're all at the hotel bar hanging out one night, and the last night, we were all trying to figure out what are we all going to go do? Are we going to go out to eat? Are we going to go dancing? We're going to go to a bar? Like, what should we do? They wanted to go dancing. And in my head, I'm like, you don't go dancing without, like, a person.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not trying to be the wallflower.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, like, get rid of that idea. And they just start bringing it up. And Corey looks over at me and he's like, well, I'll dance with you.
Ooh, okay.
It's like,
I love
okay.
that. Love that.
Okay, so that kind of
like,
sparks
you know what?
some,
Let's
like,
go.
okay.
Suddenly I love the dancing idea.
Well, it's funny. We all went to dinner and drinks at this arcade bar, and everybody left, but Corey and I ended up staying, and we sat there and talked until they closed, and then we went back to the hotel lobby and we sat and talked until like 3 or 4 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But you never went dancing?
No. Which was fine.
But
by
he
me.
would have
Shame.
danced with her.
I was fine by me. I was like, I'm good. But it was cool. It actually, like, he asked me about my tattoo, and I had never been in a place to really share, like, faith comfortably when dating. Like, I had dated people that I liked, and it, like, worked well, but the faith thing never really fit. Mm-hmm. And the fact that our conversation sparked off with that was like, ooh, this is different.
Was he already a Christian as well?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yes.
But I think we were both in a place of, like, how does this fit into a relationship like it's meant to? Mm-hmm. And I would say that neither of us had really experienced that before meeting one another. And he has said this too, but it feels very cliche, and I really don't love it. But it's like, when you know, like, it just worked so well that it was like, I just want to keep talking to you. I want to keep spending time with you. And
you moved
we
to
never.
Pittsburgh.
I did.
Yeah.
How long was that process again?
We met in February and we're married the next May.
Amazing.
So February 2014, married May 2015.
So cute.
It's wild.
All right, so you're married. And you're like, let's start making babies.
Not right away. We did take a few years to just be, which was good for us, but there also a lot of life happened in those years. Corey had open heart surgery. Like, there was just a lot of growing moments for us in those years. I will say the first year of marriage is like pure bliss. Like, everybody kind of scares you to death, right? You can probably attest to that.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, Jenna, it's the craziest thing. We just, like, get along, like, all the time.
Yeah, it's fun. It's enjoyable. Yeah. So I think those years were really good, and we finally got to the place where it's like, okay, I was turning 30. It's like, now's the time.
Did you have a number in your mind of how many kids you wanted always?
No.
All of this?
I come from a big family. So I think I always pictured a lot of kids, or just like a lot of just chaos. Like, I remember the first time Corey came to Tennessee and was around my entire, like, extended family, and the look on his face was just like,
what is going on?
This is normal? Like, because it's just him and his brother.
Okay.
His twin.
Yeah. His twin. Weird. And so I think I grew up in chaos and fun and crowdedness, and I think I pictured some of that, but was also open to whatever kind of came our way.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, as I think most married couples do, got to the point where it's like, we're ready-ish, or as ready as we think we could be, and started trying. Didn't prevent anything from happening.
Were you at this point, like, trying, or just not preventing?
Not preventing.
Okay.
And then after about a year, consulted my doctor and was just like, hey, what do you recommend? And as I think some women in the case of this have experienced, they start telling you, like, here are some things you can track, ovulation, temperature, all of this, to make it more, to give you a higher success rate. So we did that for a little while, and I got to the point where it was very all-consuming. Mm-hmm. And I hear this a lot from women who are in the position of, like, really wanting to conceive, but trying to keep it from consuming everything. Mm-hmm. And we got to the point where it was consuming everything, and so kind of took a step back and continued trying from there.
Okay. What were you feeling in that, like, first year-ish when you were, like, you're trying, you're not like seeing anything happening, but you haven't like started any like fertility things. Like, what was your overall mood with it?
I think I was, if I'm being honest, I was frustrated. I was really frustrated. Because I think growing up, like, you're told, like, if you have sex, you're going to get pregnant, right?
Literally.
There's so many stigmas that I have such a problem with. And that's one of them is it's scientifically, it's not that simple.
Yeah. When I found out that you could only get pregnant when you were ovulating, I was like, what? I thought it was like anytime you were having sex, there was a chance you could get pregnant.
Anytime it's even close to it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Anytime you're thinking about it, like, you might as well just not.
Yes.
So yeah, I was really frustrated, but it also sparked this new desire to learn and to gain more knowledge of, like, what happens in my body, what needs to happen, where does my body need to be. So it also sparked this, like, need for information.
Yeah, which is also something that's like never discussed.
But I hadn't reached the point where I was like, I had lost hope yet. Like, I was still very much hopeful. Like, okay, this is going to happen.
It's just taking a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's just taking a little bit longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you go from there with, like, how much longer until you went back to a doctor?
I gave it 6 more months. And my doctor was simply like, you should just maybe go through some testing just to see. I unknowingly didn't really know what I was signing up for or signing Corey up for.
Oh, no.
Just, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Like, just the initial testing.
Just the initial testing is really intense because they want to not only, like, I don't know a better word, but, like, dissect your husband and figure out if everything's good there, but they're tracking everything within your body, within ovulation. Like, they want, their job, as my doctor said, is to prove that everything is working as it's supposed to. So they wanted to see you all the time and take blood all the time and run tests. And it was a lot.
Exhausting. Like, we've talked about faith, like, on the podcast before. If you feel comfortable, like, where, especially since everything you guys went through with Corey's open heart surgery, like, where are you feeling at this point when you're going through the initial testing, like, in your faith? And, like, are you like, what the hell, God? Or are you like, no, I still have, like, this undeniable peace?
I would say there's no peace. And some of that was on me because I wasn't accessing peace. I was accessing control.
Okay.
That, like, this is supposed to happen on my timeline. This should be easy. And I think what probably made that worse is they weren't finding anything. Yeah. Every test looked normal. Everything proved that I was ovulating. I was able to have children. I had plenty of eggs. Like, there was nothing concrete to say, like, here's the reason you haven't gotten pregnant.
That
just
is
the unknown of it.
The most frustrating thing I can imagine, because the one thing I can relate it to is, like, when I had endo and I was in so much pain. I remember before my surgery being like, I am praying so hard that they find that I have endo, because then it can be fixed. And I'm sure you felt the same way, like, okay, maybe I'm not ovulating, then they can give me a medicine for it and we'll be good.
Maybe I'm not crazy.
Yes. But it's like, nope, you're good. And you're like, okay.
Well, and shortly after that, I was feeling some of that. But I remember talking to a close friend who was ahead on this journey. And she was just sharing, like, maybe this is a good thing, because if there was something concrete, like, you would fixate on that so wholeheartedly. And it would. I think it would have made a lot of the coming steps of our journey much harder.
Yeah.
So at the same time, I was frustrated. I'm like, okay, well, my body is functioning the way that it was made to. There's everything.
You feel like in that moment it should be a praise report.
Correct. Yes.
But you're also just like, okay, then.
And that's kind of what you were saying earlier, to answer that, is like, I was trying to remind myself, like, this could be much worse. Like, I could be, there could be a result here that would make it much harder. So that led us into our diagnosis, which is a whole another, but it's unexplained infertility. Literally.
You're like, that's my diagnosis.
That's on my chart. That's my
You don't
diagnosis.
know.
But what was crazy was I started to find all these other women who were in the exact same position.
How did you find them?
Some of it was through friends. It felt very uncomfortable for me, but there was a support group just for this specific realm of fertility patients. And that, I think, just allowed me to feel like, okay, not only am I not alone in this, but there are women ahead of me who have had successful pregnancies and have had children, and there's still no reason or rhyme to why it didn't work out the way it did for them early on. But there is hope that, you know, we'll be able to have biological children.
When they gave you that diagnosis, did they accompany it with, but there's things we could do, or were they just like, sorry?
Yes. So thankfully, and this is not everybody's experience, my doctor, Dr. Kubik, she's retired now, but she was just like so hopeful and amazing. So wonderful.
A good doctor is everything.
Literally.
It truly is. And I would say, like, if you don't feel that way, like, advocate for yourself, because that's one thing that she taught me, because she was advocating for me before I could advocate for myself.
That's amazing.
I'll never forget, as soon as we had that conversation, she was like, my job is to give you children. Like, that is why I am your doctor.
I'm gonna cry.
And we revisited that conversation multiple times through our journey, because it continued to progress. But she taught me a lot about the advocating piece, which helped me through the fertility journey, through pregnancy, through birth, postpartum. Like, it rang true for a long time and still does.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you are seeing a fertility doctor.
Yes.
What's going on now?
So
what's going on?
We start treatments, which if you don't tap into this world like more than a toe, everybody thinks you jump right to IVF. Right? But there are fertility treatments you can do before that are so much less invasive, so much less expensive. So we spent a good year doing those, and we were able to conceive our first child.
What are the treatments?
So there are a few. The ones that we did is called an IUI. It's an intrauterine insemination. So they essentially take fresh sperm, clean and remove all non-mature sperm, and test the woman at the same time to make sure it's like peak ovulation, and inject those sperm into your uterus at peak ovulation.
So it's like just helping along the process.
Yes.
Yeah, and like weeding out all of the non
very much
powerful sperm.
Very much.
Is it like
science is very interesting.
I know. Is it like painful? Are you asleep?
No.
Like
oh no, you're very much awake.
Is it just like they stick a syringe in there and
basically?
Interesting.
Okay.
There's it's interesting just because I still stay in tap to that world, just like scientifically. I find it fascinating what's possible, but all of these companies like Frida, who is amazing for moms and babies, but they have tapped into Frida Fertility and have created basically all these things for at-home fertility.
Very interesting.
So it's like, I find it uber fascinating because I'm like, I would love to have had that.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
So they're making it more accessible, but also less scary to kind of start tapping into that world. Like, had I been able to go to Target and buy something off the shelf and be like, like, let's try this out. Let's see what this experience is like. I think it would have made it feel less
intense.
Yeah, less intense. And given you more kind of control over the start of that experience.
Interesting.
So we did many of those, got pregnant on one of those, sadly miscarried that baby.
How did you feel like when you found out you were pregnant the first time?
Because this is like your first positive, right? Okay.
What were you feeling in that moment?
Disbelief in a lot of ways. Relief in a lot of ways. Because as that season progressed, it was like, is this actually going to happen? And then it happens and it's like, is it real?
Yeah.
And we were like thankfully able to like see the baby a few times, and we heard the heartbeat and got to see it move and like had proof.
Wow.
Yeah. So up until the miscarriage happened, it was like bliss. It was really enjoyable.
How long did you carry that baby for?
It was like 8 or 9 weeks, somewhere in the middle there.
Okay. So, and you probably, because you were doing fertility, you probably found out like as soon as.
I found out when I was 3 weeks.
Okay. So you knew for a while.
Yeah.
I knew for a while, and that I think is one of the benefits of the fertility world is you're not, you know, for most women, you find out you're pregnant, they're like, cool, we'll see you in like 8 weeks. That would have driven me crazy. But I know a lot of friends who have been through that experience where it's just like, we're just waiting. So it is nice that you kind of get confirmation early on, but it provided reassurance that I think when you're in the fertility journey, you need a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because you're like, this can't be real.
Yeah. Like, I need to be seeing that heartbeat, please.
Okay, so tell us about how, like, you were feeling when you miscarried, how that process went for you. What were your emotions?
Yeah.
All a million of them,
Anything
I'm sure.
you would like to share?
I mean, I if I'm being honest, in hindsight, I knew something was wrong. Just in my gut, I knew something wasn't right. I had some spotting, but it was not significant at all.
And I feel like depending on who you ask, they're like, that's normal.
Well, yeah, and I've had bleeding through all 3 of my pregnancies.
Interesting.
So it is, my doctor would say it's not normal, but it's common.
Okay.
So it is way more common, and it's, again, one of those things that no one talks about. So it's alarming regardless of the situation. Obviously, in my 3rd pregnancy now, when I see that, I'm like, I just get triggered very quickly.
Absolutely.
And I kind of hate that word, but it just takes you back to this time of like fear.
Absolutely.
But I had called my doctor. I even went in, and she's like, I don't think we have a reason to be worried for now, but if things progress or you start to feel cramping or what have you, just call us or come back in. Nothing really progressed, but later, probably 48 hours later, I had really severe cramping. And I don't know, like, how detailed you want me to get. If anybody,
as much as you want to share.
If anybody wants to know more, we can always talk more. But a few hours later, delivered baby at home. And it was a horribly traumatic experience. But at the same time, I was glad I was home. I was glad I was with Corey.
I literally cannot imagine how that felt to go through, especially after everything you had already been through. We're literally all crying if you're not watching on video.
I think this is the first time I've cried on the podcast. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like something that just becomes a piece of you. And there's still to this day, like maybe a week ago, Corey and I were both like sitting outside and just something happened and we were both just uberly emotional about it. So it's not something I think you ever get over. But I think I decided then and there is like, this is something I'm going to choose to honor for the rest of my life. And I think, you know, we jumped into the fertility world and we learned a lot. You have a miscarriage and then you all of a sudden figure out like, so many people around me have experienced this. Why is no one talking about it?
Yeah.
Why do I suddenly feel like alone? And then there's this stigma where I can't talk about it. There's no acknowledgement of this life that was and no longer is. So I quickly went into that like focus of like, I'm going to give honor to this. I'm going to call it what it is. Like my baby died. It was not anything else but that. And that I think for me just gave me validation too of like, this happened to me. I'm going to be okay. It sucks a lot. And it's really sad, but it also forced me to just like, I had a choice in that moment of like, do we stop? Do we take a minute? And I was like, if I stop, I think I'm going to go into full like depression over this. So it kind of forced me to just let's keep moving. We did take a short break from everything, but I was just
I'm sure let your body
take
recover.
a minute. Some of it was that, but it was way more mental. Some women that do miscarry or lose a pregnancy do have significant physical ailment. Sometimes it requires surgery. There's a lot of things that go into that. Thankfully, that was not my case. So we took some time to heal and kept pressing forward.
Just to take a pause while we're talking about miscarriage, what would your either advice be for someone who's going through that, or maybe someone who has friends or family that have gone through it? How to what was your best thing that helped you get through that time, and what can someone do to be there for someone else?
I think something that Ashley was saying earlier is really important, asking how can I help, because you don't really know where you're at, where someone's at with it. I have had friends who are completely distraught and heartbroken. I have friends who have had one and felt relief. So I think it's really important to acknowledge not everyone has a miscarriage and is extremely upset.
Interesting.
I think the really big piece is asking, how can I support you best? What do you need from me as your friend, as your family member? How can I best show up for you during this time? For me, the best thing was allowing space for me to talk about it.
Okay.
Because I think at first it felt very much like people didn't know what to do or what to say. So no one talked about it. And it was does no one care about what I just went through?
Yeah.
So it helped me feel like if I'm having a good day, I can have a good day and I can talk about it. But if I'm not having a good day, or if I'm feeling really bad about this baby shower that I'm sitting at, I can talk about that too. So just having close friends and family that were just in it with me, despite how I was feeling.
What are some things that people shouldn't say?
That's a great question.
Everything happens for a reason.
Oh.
I think people use that phrase for everything.
And also just when you're in the middle of something, why, I don't know, especially in the Christian world, it's all right, well, God must have something greater on the other side. You're greater than a child? I get the sentiment, but at the same time, how can you understand that that's what I want to hear?
Yeah, it goes hand in hand, because yes, God is God took that really crappy situation. I almost cursed on the podcast. I don't want to curse on the podcast.
Okay. My mom almost dropped the F-bomb, and I was like, whoa.
God took this really bad situation and used it for a lot of good. But I also believe that the God that I love was heartbroken with me in that room.
Absolutely.
Was distraught over the loss of a child. So I don't agree that God sees these things happen or feels these things happen and doesn't grieve with us.
Absolutely.
So that one was just always I'm going to ignore what you're saying, because if I say something, I'm probably going to offend you or hurt you. Gosh, and I think you said it earlier, there's so many things out there on Instagram and, all the social medias. It's here's what's not to say. But I think it's really important to acknowledge where your people are at when they're going through this. And I think if you know them well, you're going to know what to say or do. I had a friend recently go through a similar situation, and me being an Enneagram 2, a helper, a fixer, I just took, they weren't even home, but took flowers and chocolate and wrote them a long note and just left it. It's I just want you to know that I'm here.
Absolutely.
I don't want to pressure to talk. I don't want to force anything, but I want you to know that you're not alone. So I think it's important to not force what you think you would want in that situation on other people.
That's a really good point. I feel so many people are even being the helper, you could be all right, bursting down the door and let's sit down and talk about it. And they're I'm not ready to talk about it. But I love the gesture of going first and being like, here I am, like, if you need me. And then I'm sure that made her feel like, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much. Yes, I'm ready to talk about it. Come over, or like whatever.
Yeah. Ultimately, my goal is like, I want, no matter what you're going through as someone that I care for, like, I want you to feel seen and feel not alone.
Absolutely.
And so small gestures, I think, go a long way in that. And just giving space for people to kind of even feel out, like, how do I feel? What do I need?
Yeah. I feel like, agree or disagree, like, on top of that, as the person that's trying to be there, like, not get offended if they don't react the way that you want them to.
Absolutely.
Like, if you were really hoping that she was going to invite you over to, like, talk through everything, but then she just sends a simple, thank you so much for what you did.
Yeah.
That's enough. Like,
It is. And I think it's, I think you're absolutely spot on with that, because it's not about you. If you're doing it for you, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So,
okay, wait, I wanted to ask, kind of going back to, like, the fertility treatment things and, like, being there for someone. So, okay, in the scenario that, like, the first few years you're going through the treatments, but you haven't become pregnant yet, how often or how much would you personally, like, want your friends to, like, be asking you how it's going?
Oh, that's such a good
like,
question.
Yeah, how would you give advice on that?
We made an active choice to share our journey with a small circle. It was not anything that was, like, out on the internet. Most of our family was not aware, just because when you start to share that, there's a lot of follow-up questions. And I was not in the space to answer those. Corey, maybe.
How long is it going to take?
Right. Corey, maybe, and that's maybe another question you don't ask. Like,
yeah, absolutely. That is for, like, the older generation. I mean, yes, it goes for us too, but, like, the older generation, I just feel like this infertility stuff is so new to them. And so they're like, I mean, I had to tell my own grandma, like, we're not even trying for kids, but she's like, when are you going to give me a great-grand, like, kid? And I'm like, you can't be asking those things in 2023.
Right.
Like, you got to stop.
Really can't.
Right. I have a friend who is, who's expecting right now, and we were talking the other day, and it's not public knowledge, and it's amazing how if a female goes to a party and doesn't have an alcoholic drink, there's this assumption of, oh, well, they must be pregnant. But then there's also this, like, horrible assumption of, I'm just gonna, I have the ability to go ask them.
Absolutely not.
And it is so offensive to me personally, because we don't do that to guys, right?
1,000%.
A guy's at a party not having a drink, it's like, oh, your wife must be pregnant, right? No. So another thing not to say, don't ask people if they're pregnant.
I don't drink in general unless, like, I will drink at a wedding maybe, but, like,
a wedding twice a year.
Yeah, other than that.
A wedding that you're not shooting, maybe.
Yeah, it just will make me really sick, so it's not worth it to me. The amount of times people are like, someone must be pregnant. I'm like,
no.
How many people are you saying this to? Because to me, sometimes, like, if someone says this to me, I'm like, nope. But, like, for someone who's gone through so much like that, it's like, that is extremely insensitive and you have
rude.
No idea what's been going on.
Yeah. And even like, as someone who has not gotten pregnant the old-fashioned or the natural way, it can still be very triggering, even while pregnant.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because that has not been my experience. But to go back to your original question, we shared it with a small circle of, like, the steps that we were taking, because we wanted people surrounding us with prayer and support that we trusted, that we knew would show up for us in the good and the bad, despite the outcome.
Okay. Did you just share your updates with them? Or were you wanting them to also check back in with you? How often would you, like, want someone to maybe ask you about it?
I'm not naturally good at asking for help or support, so I probably should have asked for more. But I learned that very quickly, and I think the people that know me well know that I'm not one to say, hey, I need this.
Yeah.
So they would check in pretty regularly.
Okay.
We were also spending, we started fertility treatment shortly before COVID happened. So we'll jump to the IVF part shortly, but I was going through IVF during COVID. So it's like we didn't have a large community. No one really did. So the people that we were spending time with, like, they knew what was up because they saw it. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about the IVF.
So
We're recovering.
we're recovering short latte sip.
I will take one as well.
Where is your special drink from this morning?
It's from 61C in Regent Square.
Wait, 61? Is this new?
No.
No, you mean 61B. 61C
The one that's in
is
Regent Square.
Squirrel Hill.
Oh,
Okay,
I didn't know
so
there
we
was
flip-flop.
two.
There-
Okay.
yes.
So that's why I was like, I've heard of 61B, but now I'm confused.
61C. They're the same thing. The
Oh,
B and
okay.
C throw me off really badly.
It's
Okay.
for the bus lines.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm tracking.
Yeah, that's what the
I
buses
learned something
are.
new today.
Because
Okay.
that's what you used to take, right?
Yeah, me and Timmy used to ride the buses everywhere in college.
That's so cute.
Yeah, so it's the bus line that it's on.
That's a really
Okay.
good idea.
Well, it's in Regent Square. It's the closest one to me, kind of. Yeah.
Nice.
It's easy in and
What's
out.
your order?
Iced vanilla latte, always.
Always.
What kind of milk?
I mean, I love a good oat milk, but I'm not particular.
Okay. Continue.
Okay.
Yeah, whole milk is also fine.
On to IVF.
So in the miscarriage was in 2019. 2020 happens. We sign up to do IVF, and then I immediately, unexpectedly, lose my dad. So
about this element.
So we're in this place of like, we decided to do this thing. There was a lot of time and research on my part that went into that, of just like making correct decisions on healthcare, on medication, on all the things that go into it, because it's a very expensive experience. I thankfully work for a company that provides support for it.
Which is, I feel like, needs to become a universal thing. Is like
It does.
That's insane. When I heard,
It's unheard of. Mhm.
Yeah.
I remember going in and talking to the, they have an educational counselor within my doctor, which is also like, what, you have someone there that just talks to you about your benefits and how to best use them. And she was just like, I just have to tell you, like, this is completely unheard of and you should be really thankful to have it. And I was like, I'm extremely aware.
Believe me.
I'm extremely aware. So we're like set up and ready, and then my dad passes, and it halted things for me, but it was also that element of how I felt with the miscarriage, of like deep loss, deep sadness, kind of shock in a lot of ways, but just kept like, I need to push forward. I need to keep going, because if I don't, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has been a theme in my life when it comes to deeply emotional experiences. Like even the open heart stuff was with Corey. It's like my mind kind of shut off a little bit, and I just went into like Energizer Bunny, just like keep moving, keep going. It's gonna be okay.
And do you feel like within yourself there's a healthy balance of like acknowledging it happened or using pressing forward as like a distraction?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was even talking to my therapist recently just about, we revisited the loss of my dad for something, and I have this ability to kind of shut off to take care of other people. So when that happened, I was available to make decisions and make sure everybody else was taken care of. And then we came back to Pittsburgh, and I just kind of broke down.
I'm sure you're exhausted, like mentally.
And emotionally. And I think at one point I looked at Corey and I was like, I don't think that I've processed this for myself. And some of that is like a healthy protection, but some of it is very much ignore. Ignore. So once we get to a place where we're feeling as ready as possible, we begin IVF.
Tell us about everything that goes into that.
Man.
The shots.
The shots are just like, yeah. So my doctor, we sat down for like the final like paperwork, everything, kind of setting it in motion. And she's like, again, how do you feel? And I was like, a year before this, I had sat down with her and said, like, it's okay. IVF will never be in the cards for us. We'll never have to do that.
And I love the confidence, though, because, I mean, I feel like a lot of it is, like, how you speak about it. If you're going to go into that, like, first like fertility like thing, you're just gonna and thinking like, well, it's nice to know we have IVF, but it's like, okay, but like let's be present like right here and like think that this could work out for us.
Right.
Sorry, I was gonna ask, did you end up trying any more IUIs post miscarriage?
We did. I think we did 2 or 3 possibly. But again, you're waiting for your ovulation to happen. So that was multiple more months tacked on to that.
Do you just, if you're doing that, do you just typically do once a month?
You can only do one once a month.
Okay.
And so we sat down after the last one and my doctor just looked at me and she was like, we were going back and forth on whether to do another IUI or jump into IVF and just talking. And she's like, my job is to give you a child and it is to give you the best chance at it, and IVF is your best chance. I said, okay. So
I'll take that
here
chance.
we go. Just like everything else, it came with a lot of like initial testing. And what was helpful about the situation that I didn't anticipate is that you are, at least within my practice, given a nurse. And this is your person.
Aww.
You're talking through everything. They're the ones calling you, sending you updates. Like you're talking to the same person every time, which was so helpful.
Yeah.
And their job is solely IVF nursing.
Also, when you started IVF, how long had you been in the like unexplained infertility? Like how many years has it been?
In total, it was close to 2 years.
Okay.
So a lot, half of a year of that was just testing and like initial information. About a year and a half was procedure patient. So we make the decisions on medications and protocol, and it's wild. I still have it on my phone actually. They send you your whole calendar of here are the medications you take. Here's when you take them. Like I felt way too much responsibility all at once. It was like, how am I going to do this? And again, thank God that I was working from home because we were home.
Yeah.
I for a second I wondered, like, if I was in the office, how would I do this? One, I can't physically give myself a shot to save my life.
You're like, I have to.
Thank God for my husband.
Coworker.
Oh my goodness. And they're also timed like to the minute. So I am very I think God went ahead of us in that and just allowed us to be home and to do it together. I'll never forget Mel's, everybody knows Mel's 4th of July party, Mel and Jordan.
Of course.
I'll never forget my watch going off and being like,
oh no,
it's time for a shot. And going upstairs to their bedroom and Corey giving me a shot in my ass on 4th of July.
How many shots did you have to do per day, and were they all butt shots?
No, they're not all butt shots. So,
oh my gosh.
when the shots start, so there are many phases and steps with IVF. The goal of IVF is to get mature eggs, mix them with sperm, and create embryos. And to then take those embryos and put them back into your body at some later point or what have you. So the first step is taking all of these hormones to mature eggs fast. So naturally, every woman has a mature egg once a month. And that's your ovulation. Your body releases that one egg. IVF is pumping you through those drugs to mature as many as possible to then prepare you for surgery to remove them. So I'm pumping all of these drugs, and all of those are in your stomach for the most part.
The shots.
Stomach or your thigh. You can choose with some of them. My doctor said, your thigh is going to be a lot more sore if you do that, so I would recommend stomach. And it's a softer tissue, so it's usually a little bit easier. So all of those are in my stomach. Those were anywhere from 4 to 7 shots a day, depending on the day.
Oh my gosh.
That's insane.
It's a full-time job.
It was.
Literally.
It was, yeah.
Where did you just go and pick up a literal box of
all of the needles?
No, so you can, depending on the route that you go. Walgreens Specialty Pharmacy was my pharmacy, and they ship everything to you. And it's a whole separate pharmacy. So again, it's a very catered experience that was very positive of just hey, we're here for you on this experience. Here's everything that you're getting in your order. When you get it, call us so we can walk you through what's in the box. You literally get an ice chest delivered to your house with all the meds, because some of them have to stay in the fridge. And it's everything from the needles to retract the medicine, the needles to inject the medicine, your sharps boxes, like the whole gamut.
Holy
Wow.
moly.
I'll send you some pictures for
Please.
the aftermath,
Yes,
because I documented the entire experience from start to finish, and it's wild to look back at the shots. And I have pictures of Ruby as like an embryo with all of the sharps.
Yeah.
165 shots total.
I was just about to ask. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I know. I love that picture.
So then you get through those shots, and they're tracking you almost every day. You're going in for blood work. They're watching you very closely.
No.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. You literally either have to work from home or
Don't
work.
or take, yeah. Had we, had COVID not happened, we had discussed like a short-term leave option. But again, we were not in that situation.
Wow. Okay. Continue.
Yeah. So what can happen is you're pumping your body through all these hormones that it naturally creates to stimulate growth of eggs. You can very quickly become overstimulated, which has some risk involved. There's a lot of things that can really mess up your, it can overmature the eggs. It can, so like your ovaries are basically little pockets, they're little bubbles, and they're stretching and expanding, so it can be really uncomfortable. Like for a while, none of my pants would fit because I was so swollen in the abdomen. It can also take and torque your ovaries, which can be really dangerous. It can cut off blood supply. Like there's a lot of risk, not to go
That's
into
why
it
they're
too much.
monitoring you every
That's
day.
why you're monitoring. Yes. So we get to the point where everything looks good and we schedule surgery. And that's again like a 24-hour, like you're having surgery tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Is it through the vagina or do they cut you?
It is through your vagina. Yes, they're going internally. No incisions have to be made. It is I'd have to look again, 10 or 12 inch needle that's being injected into your ovary.
Wait, are you awake?
No. Oh, no.
Okay, thank God.
No. It was funny because as we go in, and it's all in the same place, so I felt super comfortable. And the anesthesiologist comes over and he's like, so how are you feeling? And I was like, honestly, I'm not even worried about the needle. I don't want to be awake. The only surgical experience I'd had prior was my wisdom teeth being removed. And I don't know, I think I've told you this story before, but I woke up halfway through that.
Abbey Grace. That's terrifying.
I woke up halfway through and I was just like, obviously discombobulated, but was just like, are we done? And they're like, no, we have 2 more. And they get them out, they put me back to sleep, whatever. But after the end, I was just like, what happened? And he was like, oh, you remember? I was like, yeah, I remember. You were in, like, yes, it was horrible.
Oh my gosh.
And so fast forward to this, and I'm talking to the anesthesiologist, and he's like, what are you worried about? I was like, I don't want to be awake. I am scared to death
Keep me down.
that I'm
Please keep me
going
down.
to not respond to anesthesia after that experience, because they had told me they'd given me like 4 times the dose of a normal adult. Like, so in my head, I'm like, I don't respond to anesthesia. Like, what are we gonna do? And he was just like, I promise you, you will not wake up.
I'm better than the wisdom teeth guy.
I would say so. Yes. Yes.
I would say probably this might be totally off, but it feels to me like a wisdom teeth operation maybe gets more inexperienced anesthesiologist.
Yeah. They get the one like a year out of grad school.
I would say,
good,
yeah.
buddy.
I would say if your job is to keep someone asleep, like,
Come on, dude.
let's just excel in that area, maybe.
Literally, please.
At least in my experience. But so he puts my IV in, which again was like, I'm not really here for the needles, but we've gotten past that at this point. I go to sleep. The last thing I remember is laying down on the OR table, and then the next thing I know, I'm in recovery.
Oh,
And it's like a 45-minute process. Like, it was super short.
God.
So they told me, like, obviously, like, we walked through some results. They wanted me to get up and go to the bathroom before I could go home, and then went home.
Were you sore?
Yes. And to the point where the following 24 hours, I was in a lot of pain. And they had only given me Tylenol, like max dose Tylenol, because most women walk out of that and they're fine because you've removed all the pressure, right? Well, I was overstimulated. as per one of the risks. So I ended up at McGee for some follow-up to make sure that we did not do permanent damage to my ovaries. So that process was a little intense.
I swear.
I know.
I was going to say, I would have been so furious at that point if that was going to be the case.
It wasn't even anger. It was more, you know, we just went through this to get all of these mature eggs, and there is always the chance of those eggs not fertilizing with sperm. So I had no promise at that point of it actually working. So in my head, I'm like, if something's happening to my ovaries, then like,
You also
I'm really screwed.
Yeah, because also at that point, you are then hoping that the embryo that they create will also implant in you and that you will grow it yourself. So there's still a lot ahead of you.
And we were on track for a fresh transfer. So in theory, we go through the surgery, we get the eggs, we fertilize them. Within 5 to 7 days, they're taking one of those fresh embryos and putting it back in my body.
Within a week of the surgery? Okay.
And so my doctor was like, your body already has all of these extra hormones within it. When you get pregnant, it adds a whole lot more. That's going to put your body at more risk. So we need to press pause and let your body chill. Get some of this medication expelled from your body, and then we'll do a frozen transfer. So they take, and this, like what I'm about to share is not the case for everyone. And I am overly aware and thankful that our IVF experience yielded very well for us. They took 42 eggs from my body that were mature, which is unheard of.
That's a lot.
And at the end of the day, 18 of those matured fully with sperm.
Wow.
So we were really grateful that that was never going to have to be an experience that we would have to do again. I have friends that have gone through IVF 2 and 3 and 4 times.
So you have 16 other
I have
embryos
15.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
that like are you and Corey
Yeah.
that are in a freezer.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Okay, so sorry, because I want to.
No, it's okay.
I want to like ask. So you never had to go through that. So with this baby, it was just like, all right, plant them in there.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there are obviously like things that go along with it.
Did you have to do needles this time?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
every cycle requires needles of some sort. But so our course of action changed with the frozen transfer. Gave my body a month to chill, had a normal period, moving on. There is a drug that you take to start to prep your body to hold the embryo. Progesterone. It's a oil-based drug. I still have knots on the side of my hips and my butt from progesterone that will maybe go away one day.
Oh my gosh.
Like very big needles. I think I've shown you them before. You start taking those shots once a day, sometimes twice a day, depending on the regimen, and get ready for the prime time to drop embryo in.
So when they put the embryo in, is it a similar procedure to the IUI? They
Yes.
just put it through the vagina?
Yes. They're going through your vagina, through the cervix, directly to the top of the uterus, where baby would normally form from the egg that's dropping. The really cool part is that there is a job out there called an embryologist, whose job is to literally take care of the embryos and treat them and grade them.
He's like, hello.
Yeah.
A+.
Well, at one point, somebody gave Ruby a shirt. It's like, my first babysitter was an embryologist. And it's actually very true.
That's
because
so cute.
That's so cute.
she is an embryo, was just in a catheter. So yeah, it's kind of an uncomfortable scenario, not the most uncomfortable, but your bladder is full. You're in the stirrups.
That's what they make you do during sonograms too. Like they want your bladder to be full,
Oh.
and then they press on your stomach. You're like, oh, shit.
So they have a probe with ultrasound because they want to see your cervix and they want to see where the catheter is. So you're also in the stirrups and they're
It's like
in there.
spread eagle.
Yep. They're in there with the catheter. Again, nothing really hurts, but it's just kind of like, my bladder's full, you're pushing. I feel like I need to pee really badly. Let's get the show on the road. So yeah, they prepped a little embryo and dropped the embryo in and call it a day. It's like a very
quick.
It's so funny.
Very quick, very kind of casual.
I was literally just about to say, it feels so casual, and then you're just like, so I'm pregnant?
Yeah, so my doctor would always say, it's like, you're pregnant until proven otherwise, which I love that aspect. I was like, yes, okay. The first embryo transfer that we did not take, which was kind of another level of like,
what the heck?
Loss and frustration. Like, we've been like, this is where we felt peace to move in this journey, and it's not working. Why? So we took some time to, again, reassess. How are we feeling? What do we want to do? I
feel like you and Corey are so in touch with your emotions. I feel like that's a very fair thing to say and like be very proud of. Because I don't know, from an outsider's perspective, I feel like you guys are always just like, how are we feeling? How are you feeling? Are we good?
Let's talk through it. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's all the crap that we've walked through that
you can call it trauma.
Yeah, trauma. That's a fair word. Everything that we've been through is taught like, yeah, how are you feeling? Yeah, I wouldn't say that we're perfect at it, but we do, I feel like, take time to acknowledge, like, even just to give space of like, how are you feeling? Do you want to talk about it? Do you not want to talk about it? Which is hard for me when he's like, I need a minute. I'm like, okay.
Oh, literally,
I'll give you a minute.
Well, interesting.
I know. Well, it's like when I know something's up, I'm like, I want to talk about it. Just tell me, because I want to be the fixer. And he's kind of similar in that way too, but it's a good balance of one another. So we very quickly, next month, I'm like, let's do it. My doctor's like, dude. And I was like, no. We have to do it. So we start the shots again. Just the shots to prep to carry embryo. And we transfer what will be Ruby on July 15th.
That was just this weekend.
Yeah. So couple.
Ruby's transferversary.
Right? Ruby's transferversary. Wow. 3 years ago.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. And so after that, you had a great pregnancy, which was well-deserved.
Well, even before you get to that point, so they put the embryo in and you're like, what now? Mm-hmm. And they're like, we'll see you in 9 days for a blood test. So the longest 9 days of your whole life. You go in, they take blood work, like, we're going to call you with the results. So literally all day, I'm like, please. I like pick up things to do work, and I'm like, yeah, I can't work.
Also, like, are in this 9 days, are you treating yourself like you're pregnant?
Yes.
Like, you're not drinking, maybe taking prenatals?
I had actually taken prenatals through the whole experience. Okay. That's kind of one of the things that they recommend starting really early. Okay. Because if you are deficient in any sort of like,
it'll really get you up to speed.
Vitamin or iron, things like that, they want to supplement that early.
Jenna's low in iron. We talked about it for this week's episode.
Yeah.
Very low.
Those are things they look at very closely. So, yeah, I was on that. Not to go too much of a tangent, but when it comes to, like, the things that you should do when pregnant or what's recommended when pregnant when it comes to eating and drinking and all the things that you're putting in your body, I had also done a whole lot of research about that. And, like, because a doctor will say, like, no drinking is safe during pregnancy. I got to the point where I was used to having a provider who gave me data and science and not just an opinion. And so I took it upon myself to really figure out, like, what's actually safe, what's not safe, why is it recommended, why is it not recommended. I wanted more information, which sometimes can be, like, too much, but it really allowed me to feel like I'm making decisions on what I feel comfortable with and what feels comfortable to my body. But yes, I would say I treated myself as pregnant.
Sorry. Continue.
No, I think it's a great question.
So we're up to it's been 9 days. They're like, I'm
9
going
days.
to call you.
I think they would see me as early as I wanted. I mean, they started appointments, I think, in the 5 o'clock hour and went all day.
Wow.
Morning?
Mm-hmm.
Were you like, okay,
you're like, I'm going to be a doorbuster.
I literally think it was like a 6:30 appointment. I can remember the picture I took, like a selfie outside of the office. And I'm in, like, basically pajamas and my glasses and my hair's in a bun because I'd rolled out of bed, take my blood, go home. And they're like, we'll call you. I'm like, okay, when? They're like, we'll call you. I'm like,
today? Tomorrow?
So
Same
how
day.
fast does
Same
the
day.
machine work?
Right. So I remember just sitting downstairs trying
Was Corey
to work.
home all day, too?
Corey's home. He was
Okay.
working from home as well. And we knew it was coming, so it was like we were both trying to kind of stay busy, but both horribly distracted. And they call, and it's just a simple like, so we took your blood today. I'm like, She's like, you're pregnant.
Do you have a video of when
I don't have a video of that one. I was not
thinking about
thinking
that?
ahead.
All you're thinking is answer the phone.
Yeah, I think I was so present, thankfully, that I wasn't thinking about that. I have pictures and video of like when we went back the days following and the weeks following, but I just remember walking in to what's Corey's office and just losing my mind. And Corey, it always makes me laugh because he's like, your response to happy emotion and sad emotion is the same thing.
He's like, I never know what it
I
is.
never really know what to expect. But got to share that with him. And
How did you feel like, because I know this is like another, I guess, like hot topic amongst this, whole realm, is like you've gone through a miscarriage and then now you're pregnant again. How do you feel? Like, do you feel like, okay, if I just make it to 9 weeks, which is when it happened last time, I'll be okay? Or is it like a constant fear or no fear? Like, how are you navigating that?
for me, the immediate response was excitement and relief. Very soon after, it was fear. And is it real? And is baby okay? So yeah, and that was true throughout Ruby's entire pregnancy.
Wow. So how, like, again, going back to, like, how could someone that knew you in that time, like, support you through that? Because I know also, like, something that a lot of people say very wrongly is, like, well, at least you're pregnant again.
Yeah.
So, like...
Yeah.
I'm totally disregarding the loss that has already happened.
I mean, one of my best friends, something that she does really well is, and she may not even realize this, but I know this about her, is how are you feeling? That's the same thing that she asks me all the time. And it just gives free space to kind of say whatever I am feeling. And I think that community that was close with us through the journey and the loss, and then the loss of my dad, like, they know where we're at, and it's not all easy. And my close friends who have gone through this process and experienced loss before and during IVF is acutely aware of how it feels. And I don't think that it's something you ever really get over. I have not experienced it as much with this pregnancy, but it is still something that is very present.
Okay, so now you're pregnant.
Yes.
You go through Ruby's whole pregnancy. Everything went great.
Yeah.
Delivered
It was
a beautiful little girl.
Yeah. After 36 hours. Yes.
Abby Grace and I had a pretty similar birth experience.
We did. You had more balls going into it with the home birth.
Yeah, but that was kind of my downfall in the end.
It's such, like, I've talked about this with one of my close friends too, and it's like the balance these days of, like, not listening to the people being like, just you wait, and, like, Jenna, like, had so much faith, and, like, I'm sure she will going into her next pregnancy, like, and I'm going to speak it, like, this is how it's going to be, and it's like, obviously that didn't work out, but in the end, like, I don't know if, like, you would have wanted someone to be like, okay, like, let's have a backup plan just in case, because then I feel like you go back of like, oh, okay, my faith is lacking then, or like, I need to be able to speak this, and so it's such an interesting dichotomy.
It really is of being like, I'm going, like, that was my thing, is that I didn't pack a hospital bag because I was like, I'm in faith believing that my child will be born here, and then it's like, okay, that didn't happen, and that's like, that is definitely, if we ever do record our faith episode, like, that's a hard concept in general as a Christian to wrap your mind around.
Yeah,
any situation. I prayed for this, it didn't happen. What's the deal?
What's
know
next?
What I mean?
Yeah. I, again, having a phenomenal provider through this experience, when they start talking about what's your birth plan, she was like, the best advice I was ever given was have preferences, not a plan. And I loved that. And that rang true through Ruby's experience. I learned a lot through her birth, and again, kind of tapped into more like, why is this recommended? Why is this the norm? I think the problem, at least in our country, is that pregnancy is treated as a one shoe fits all.
Oh,
And that's so not true. What works for one person does not always work for the other. So I feel like I did really well advocating for myself through that, but it will be a lot different this go around.
Yeah.
In that realm. But I was also in a place of like, if something is not going according to the way that we want it to, or the way that, Ruby is going to have it, then I want to be in a place where I feel like if intervention is needed, then we're there. And I don't know that I would say thankfully, don't love the way that it happened, but it happened and we were able to get her out safely.
Yeah. What was I feel like we have a few more questions and we'll like wrap up, but like try to describe the experience of after 36 hours, after 2.5 years, maybe at this point, of this entire process, having Ruby like laid on your chest, and you're just like, you're here and you're real.
So I went into it like, I think I pictured in my head like once my water broke and like things started to progress, that I would be like very frantic and very nervous. But my water broke in bed. And it didn't even wake me. Like, Corey woke me up and was like, babe, the bed is wet. Like, what's up?
What's going on?
I was like, oh, my water broke. Just get a towel. Because in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to go to the hospital immediately. So I'm going to go back to bed.
If I can sleep through contractions, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And I had very mild contractions that morning, called my doctor. And then we went in like a few hours later.
Was your IVF doctor was not the one who delivered Ruby?
No.
Okay.
She was strictly for the reproductive process. At the 8 or, depending on your journey, at the 8 or 10 week appointment, you get discharged from the fertility team. And then you see your primary OB or midwives or whatever your choice is at that point.
Okay, got it.
Which is really interesting from a fertility perspective, because you're used to seeing baby like every week and getting these updates all the time. And then it's like, we'll see you in 6 weeks. I'm like,
what?
Can I come back in tomorrow?
Does my insurance cover weekly visits?
Right. And thankfully, like, and again, this has been my experience, like my midwives have been really sensitive to my journey and are just like, if there's something you need, just tell us. Like, we're here for you. We want to be supportive of you. So that has felt really supportive through the entire journey. I pushed a long time for Ruby, way too long. And through pushing, she flipped. And so she was going like trying to come out sideways, which is not really possible. And things started to progress really fast, and they brought in the OB on call, who there have only been a few moments in my life where I felt like a true peace presence, like enter a room, and this was one of them. Dr. Laura, she came in. There were so many people in the room, and I remember looking at Corey. I'm like, I need you to get everybody out. I need everybody out of here.
Silence.
I just need to talk to her one-on-one. I need to get a feel for like where she's at, because if we're making a decision, like I don't want the noise. And so she started to talk to us about options to like help get Ruby out. So we decided, she was like, what I loved about her, she's like, I want to give you a chance to do this. I don't want to assume that you can't do this and just go in for surgery and that be that. And I told her, like, the one thing I would love to avoid would be a cesarean. But if that's the route that we have to go, then I'm also prepared for that. And so we agree that she's going to take me into the OR. They're going to have me ready should we need to do surgery, but she's going to give me a chance with some slight intervention. And with 2 pushes, Ruby was out. And I think what you were asking me about earlier, like that continual like fear and anxiety that I felt through my body her entire pregnancy. Corey's sitting next to me, and I know it, but he will attest to it now. He's losing his mind. He's like, what's happening? What's going on? I'm scared. And I remember vividly, probably more than actually holding Ruby, I remember vividly closing my eyes, humming a Maverick City song, and just feeling this like utmost peace. And I remember the physical feeling of this anxiety leave my body as soon as she exited it.
Wow.
Like the calm and the peace that I had when they put her on me was just like, okay, that journey has closed its door and we have done it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Emotional.
So that's all like, that's the big, like when I look back on that experience, there's a lot of little things, but that was the big like
I can breathe. And
sigh.
rest easy.
Yeah. I feel good. Yeah.
And then
Incredible.
this second pregnancy, you transferred one of your frozen embryos.
We did.
And how have you felt emotionally like throughout this one?
I mean, I thankfully love being pregnant. I thrive. My current midwife, she's like, there's my freak of nature. Because everyone around me, like I have 2 coworkers too that are expectant, and everybody's like, you know,
hate this.
I hate it. It's horrible, you know, yada, yada, yada. And I'm just like, hey guys.
I'm just chilling.
I'm good. Well, and my boss, like when I told her, she's like, I honestly like most people like, you know, have a couple days where they call out or they're not feeling well. And she's like, are you good? And I'm like, yeah, I'm great. Yeah, I think emotionally it's not about fear or the unknown. It's more excitement. It's more Corey and I think our greatest relationships in our lives are our siblings. And so for us, it was if it was possible to give Ruby a sibling, like that meant a lot to us.
Wow.
Because of how we feel about our brothers. And so, I mean, if you look back at our wedding, we did not, our bridal party was our brothers. My brother stood with me and his brother stood with him.
So sweet.
Like it has very much shaped us into the people that we are. So I was really desiring that experience for Ruby if possible. So I'm excited. I never really pictured myself as like a girl mom or a boy mom. And now that we will have both, I'm like, this is
amazing.
Wild.
Yeah.
Like the thought of having a little boy now after having a little girl is like, what?
Like, what will the relationship be?
Yeah.
It's so, because we talk about the same things, like after having a girl, and you've had a girl for much longer. I mean, she's over 2 years old now. And now it's just like, what will it be with this little boy?
Yeah. I know. But then I look back at when I became a big sister. I'm the oldest. I have 2 younger brothers. And like, I mean, I feel extra lucky that I have 2. But I remember when Matt was born and being like, this is the greatest thing. Like, it's so much fun. And just the experiences that he and I have gotten to share. And then when Barton was born, it's just like, wow, like this is such a cool thing. I'm really thankful that I had siblings growing up. So I'm really excited for her, and I think she'll love it.
Oh, she'll be so just like,
she'll be such like a mom, I feel like. Yeah, the most loving and nurturing.
I know, it's like we were talking earlier. I just want like, Ruby, you know how chill you are? Like your vibes. I need you to just like
impart them onto him.
Yes. Let's push that forward. So
I'm emotionally drained, but I loved it. Don't tell our moms. I feel like you're my favorite guest.
That's sweet. I won't tell them.
Well, do you have anything else you want to add?
No. Do you have anything else that you want to like say to anyone who might be going through this? Any last pieces of advice?
I mean, I think the big piece is like, it's funny. I was at church. I was at the college ministry this past week, and I went to the bathroom, and as I was coming out of the stall, this other very young girl was coming out as well. And she looked over at me and she was like, I'm so sorry, but I just found out I'm pregnant. I was like, oh my gosh, congratulations. Like, I'm overjoyed for her. And she starts crying, and I'm just like, okay. It's like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And she was like, my mom disowned me. the father's not in the picture. I don't really speak to my dad. I don't know what to do. And so we sit in the bathroom at church and we just start talking and exchange information, and we pray and et cetera, et cetera. And I would say, if you don't have support for anything that you're going through, find it. And I would happily be that person for anyone that wants to talk about anything through, you know, from what we started with to where we ended, anything in between. It was such a beautiful thing that she like had the courage to go up to some stranger and be like, I see that you're pregnant, so like maybe you'll help me.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. Like, my desire is to share my experience to help and support and inform others, because it was not anything that I ever anticipated for my life. But I'm really grateful for what I've learned through the process. And obviously, like, Ruby's the best gift that we could ever be given. So I think that would be it.
Incredible.
Beautiful.
You're amazing. And we love you so much.
I love you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
I feel
me.
like, again, like you're saying, like, not a lot of people talk about it. Those resources and people in your life weren't there. And I just love your heart for, like, wanting to be there for other people, come on a podcast. We might not have, like, 1 million listeners, but, like, still, like, to be vulnerable on a public forum, I just think is very noble and very brave.
I'm sure that you will be a beacon of hope to some people listening, for sure.
It's like, my hope is that someone that even maybe not be struggling with it could share it with someone that is. You know, they may not even know me, but, like, you guys have my information. Share it out. If you need to chat, I would love to.
Let's drop your Instagram for everybody.
I will. It's at Abbey Grace Jones. Full gamut.
Nice and simple.
I follow the podcast, so you could easily find me.
Yes, and Abbey is spelled with an EY.
Abbey.
Yes.
All right. We love you.
Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.